Hi, everybody. This is the beginning of the closed session of the April 14th meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. I'm Len Welsh, the Board President. This time I'll take roll call. Director Cordova.
Here.
Director Gillette. Here. Director Sherris-Watt.
Here.
And Director Toombs.
Here.
So we have a full house. This time, I don't see too many people here. Would anybody from the public like to comment on the one matter that's agendized for the closed session? No? Okay, then at this time we'll break and go into closed session. We're discussing a lawsuit entitled Meyer versus KPPCSD et al. It's a lawsuit that arises out of an injury on a path. Somebody got hurt walking on one of the paths.
One of the paths, and they may hurt themselves, and they're claiming that different defendants are responsible.
Okay, at this time we'll break and go into closed session. Okay, folks, we're going to start. This is the April 14th, 2016 regular session of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection.
Folks, we're starting.
Hello, folks. Please sit down. Please settle down and be quiet so we can start. We don't want to be here till 1 a.m. again. This is the April 14th, 2016 regular meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District Board of Directors. My name is Len Welsh. I'm the Board President. This time I'll take roll call. Director Sherris-Watt.
Here.
Director Toombs.
Here.
Director Cordova.
Here.
And Director Gillette.
Here.
Yeah, we're all here. We just came out of closed session, and in that session we were briefed by our attorney on the agendized item. No action was taken. So at this time, I will ask if any members of the public would like to comment.
No, we were going to move the agenda if
You want to swear the officer in?
I was going to swear the
Okay.
officer in to get started for the night.
Okay.
If that's okay, if we can move the agenda around.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to do it after comment. That's fine. Go ahead.
I put on the
Go ahead.
We good?
Yeah.
All right. So if I can bring up Mr. Theodore William Foley, as a lot of you probably have already seen on the on my general manager's report. Mr. Foley is our newest officer, and it's my pleasure to swear him in tonight officially in front of the residents of Kensington. So Mr. Foley attended the police academy in 1994. He worked for the Visalia Police Department, later worked for the Madera County Sheriff's Office. He worked as a patrol officer and a narcotics officer. Currently working for G4S ICE as a detention and fugitive officer. I'm not sure we're supposed to ask what that's about, all right? Served in the United States Army from 1994 to 1999, and U.S. Coast Guard from 2009 to the present. Officer Foley is not new to Kensington, as he has been a reserve officer for the past 6 years. Officer Foley comes to Kensington with significant experience as a post firearms instructor, impact weapons instructor, range master, and basic SWAT operations. Officer Foley is married and can speak, read, and write Spanish fluently. And as a result of him being around for 6 years as a reserve officer, I have 2 accommodations that I'd like to read real quick that were in his file from being a reserve. This is from the Terrorist Screening Center, Washington, D.C., and this was to Chief Harmon. This is on behalf of the terrorists. This is dated March 3rd, 2012. On behalf of the Terrorist Screening Center, I would like to thank you and your command, and commend Officer Ted Foley of your agency. On February 21st, 2012, during the course of performing law enforcement duties and upon learning of a possible subject match to a terrorist watch, Officer Foley followed the appropriate protocols by contacting the TSC. That contact allowed TSC to determine that the encounter individual was in fact a positive match to a known suspected terrorist. Additionally, Officer Foley provided information which may provide viable to the FBI and other local, state, and federal agencies and the overall United States intelligence community. TSC appreciates his leadership and the entire department's dedication to protecting the nation. Also in 2012, I'm not sure what he's done from 2012 to the present, but on Thursday, July 26, 2012, at approximately 11:30 hours, Reserve Officer Foley, while on duty and driving to the range, noticed a woman trying to flag down officers on Castro Street in Point Richmond. Noting she was crying, he stopped and asked if she was all right. She immediately pointed to a Ford pickup truck and started to run towards it, screaming. As he approached the woman and the truck, he found a man was crushed underneath it. He immediately called for the assistance from the people passing by, and together, he lifted the truck off the man and pulled him to safety. He contacted dispatch and provided emergency first aid to the victim while paramedics arrived on the scene. Once paramedics were on the scene, he translated for Spanish-speaking victim to the emergency personnel. So with all that, it is my pleasure to swear him in officially as the newest Kensington police officer. All right, raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Theodore William Foley,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will
well
well
and faithfully
and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
So I've already presented him with this badge. All right, so we took it off today so we can present it. We did shine it up and so forth. So, but it's going to be my pleasure. He has told me that his wife is not able to attend tonight, so he asked me to put on his badge for him. So it is my pleasure to do that. All right, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So the microphone is yours for a quick update to the community, or say hello.
Hello, everybody. So I'd like to thank the chief and the district for this tremendous opportunity. I've served here for a while as reserve, but I look forward to serving you in a full-time capacity. Thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you guys out there.
Okay, would anybody like to come up and comment?
Thank you. I would. I'm going to try to do this in a New York 5 minutes. I'll read it because I want to get it all in. I've given you a copy of my remarks, which is expanded from the one I'm going to read. President Welsh and honorable board members, I urge you strongly to vote on the proposed police MOU this evening and to pass it. This is a revenue-neutral contract proposal.
Excuse me, that item is on the agenda, so you need to wait until that's up. I'm sorry.
I will go to the second point. About the recent investigation, this is as well addressed to the board. About the recent investigation by the City of Richmond Police Department concerning the traffic stop of a director, the allegations have risen to the level of tabloid or reality show fodder. What has happened to Kensington? It looks like we've gone from Mayberry to mayhem, shades of Donald Trump. When I moved here in 1977, this was a friendly town governed by volunteers, and I believe that it still is friendly today. A few years ago, our government, which is headed by you directors, stopped focusing on matters of government and moved to a focus on personal matters of individuals. I suspect that this sidetracking of district business is the goal of nihilists and gossip mongers. It is meant to make us appear to be in constant chaos so that our small community collapses inward, ready to be sucked up by the neighboring town. And remember, we are officially in the sphere of influence of El Cerrito, and there is a definite push from the more vocal critics of the board towards contracting with El Cerrito for our fundamental services. While there are several legal reasons why this may not be possible, the most important reason is to preserve our independent force here, which has given us a wonderful and safe quality of life. I have been in your seat, and I have experienced the great inconvenience and stress of being targeted by public disapproval and invective. You are all to be thanked and respected for your volunteer services, which epitomizes the enduring character of Kensington citizens. So, let's clear the air. There is an official report of the investigation of the vehicle stop of one of our directors and the ensuing interaction with our officers. Several official complaints have been made. I call upon everyone, police officers and directors, to waive any privilege they may have which could prevent the release of the investigation report. Let the people see it. This is an educated community. If you really do stand for transparency, you will encourage the release of the investigation report to the citizens so they can judge for themselves what happened. If you do not, then all that remains is what we have now: speculation, interpretations, and spin by partisans. If you feel you hold a privilege barring the release, then waive it. The taxpayers of Kensington deserve nothing less. My final point regards social media. It's short. There should be an immediate review of policy regarding board member participation on social media with respect to matters over which the board has purview. When a director writes to a site such as Nextdoor about a matter in discussion by the board, that director presents at least an appearance of bias. Should another director join him or her, then no other director may join, as that could very well constitute an unnoticed meeting under the Brown Act. Some matters are prohibited entirely from disclosure. An immediate policy is needed to deal with this subject, as we have already seen the war of social media positions with respect to a matter which is subject to non-disclosure, in my view. Again, I do thank you all for your time and your service, and I'll address my remarks regarding the MOU later.
Mr. President, just for information, we do have the 5 o'clock or 5-minute time period. 3 minute? 3 minutes. So that's what that will go off every 3 minutes.
Well, it's 5.
It's 5.
It's 5.
So it's
I would ask people to, as you know, we went very late last time around. I would ask people to try and be as brief as you can. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce myself to everybody here. My name is Justin Buffington, and I'm an attorney for the Kensington Police Officers Association. And I'm here to discuss, and very happy that Ms. Lipscomb mentioned the concept of releasing the report in question regarding the traffic stop of a director by members of the Kensington Police Officers Association and the department. And one of the things I'd like to first note is there are a number of allegations that were levied about the department in general, and not just the POA, and those were allegations of conspiracy by members of the department and the association to stalk, to harass, and to intimidate the director in question. We really had no way to refute those facts, and in fact, we were waiting for the facts to come in. The facts are now in the form of this report that I hold in my hand here. And this report was completed by an outside investigator with the Richmond Police Department, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, who's never set foot in the city of Kensington, doesn't know any of the involved parties, and so we believe it reflects a thorough and impartial investigation and inquiry into the circumstances that occurred in October of 2015, of which there is a audio recording of the entire traffic stop as part of the investigation as well. We finally now have a chance to respond, and we did so in the form of a summary of some of the facts that occurred and that were referenced in the investigation, and I know a number of you have seen that. But now we have the actual investigation here, and the people involved, the people that did have a privilege, the officers involved, they have decided to waive the privilege and to allow the public to see this investigation so that you, the public, can scrutinize the investigation, and then you, the public, can be privy to the facts that are contained in the investigation and conduct your own analysis. Now, out of respect for this director, we would ask, and we're out of respect, we're going to ask the director, and we're going to give the director an opportunity, even though we don't believe any privacy rights are implicated by the release of this particular document, because the privacy rights are designed to protect employees and not complainants. But we would ask, and the only thing standing between the public seeing this document and finding out the facts and the truth is the assent and the agreement of that particular director to release this document. So we would ask that the director agree to the release of this document, and we would be happy to make it available to the public, and then the public can be their own judge and draw their own conclusions about what occurred. So we would make that standing request, and we would hope that in the interest of the truth coming out, that the director would agree to do so. Sure.
No, let him finish his comment, and then you can get up and comment.
And so, with that being said, that's really the end of what I've got to say today, and we'd love to be able to make it public, and we'd love to be able, for the people of Kensington to reach your own conclusions, and also to wade through the facts that were distilled from the investigation itself. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment?
Before I conclude, I have some documents that I would like to make sure reach into the record here, and I would like to hand those out to all the directors.
Go ahead.
Are you leaving?
Well, there's no back and forth.
We're not having a conversation, we're giving comments.
Yeah, what does that mean about this press release? Is this now null and void? Does he take it all back? What does that mean?
We're not going to have a conversation. Make a comment, okay? Did you have a comment? Please go ahead and make
I
it.
think this press release is embarrassing, and I thought that the author, if that's the author, was going to be here to make some comments.
That's not on the agenda, okay? This is a public comment
How did you
period
get
for
to
items
speak?
not on the agenda. Anybody gets to speak. It's the public comment period.
Okay, do I get another 5 minutes, or I have to start?
Your 5 minutes are running. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me begin by what I was going to say, and one of the questions said not going? Yeah. I was going to ask is about President Welch. I was going to ask if he's going to offer an apology for his unpresidential comments and behavior at last month's meeting.
No.
Wait a minute. Yeah, what are the rules here? Do you get the
Okay,
answer?
I take it back. I take it back. Please finish.
Thank you. Oof, gee, this is fluid. Okay. I think he was disrespectful to another board member, a person who was addressing the board, and the citizens in the audience. That's why I asked that an apology be forthcoming. Secondly, I'd like to read a few passages from the policy manual of the Kensington Police Department. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. I'll be reading from the section called Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. So, here we go. Apparently, I may not be able to get through all of this, but I'll make a stab at it. I may jump to a couple of the highlights because my 5 minutes are running. So this says, Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community, to safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights of all to liberty, equality, and justice. Can't argue with that, right? Here's the next part that really gets me. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all, and will behave in a manner that does not bring discredit to me or my agency. Let me repeat. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all and will behave in a manner that does not bring discredit to me or my agency. Again, let me highlight another one, next paragraph. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, political beliefs, aspirations, animosity, or friendship to influence my decisions. There's more. I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the police service. I will never engage in acts of corruption or bribery, nor will I condone such acts by other police officers. Another heading, next paragraph. I know I alone am responsible for my standard of professional performance and will take every reasonable opportunity to enhance and improve my level of knowledge and competence. That all is from the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. I would like to try to get through all of that because it goes on in detail about those things. Is that my limit or something?
That's 5 minutes.
Am I done? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Let's go up. You know, we do get to comment after you guys, so we can address your questions and comments.
I have a quick question here. Is there a line here for this or something? Are people just jumping up whenever they want? Shouldn't there be some kind of an orderly line or something people can know?
Well, it might be nice to respect the wishes of those who want to speak, but anyway, if you go ahead and get up and ask your question, and if we can address it in our comments, we will. Okay?
I just want to know what document that Mr. Buffington gave to you, and if it's the report and they waive their rights, does that mean, I had understood that the board members could not look at the report because the board members are the appeal board. So does that mean that they waive their right to an appeal if that's what Mr. Buffington gave you, or what does it mean?
What he gave us is the
Here's a copy for you.
Press release.
Right
You
here.
can go take a look at it. It's not the report. Okay, who would, or you're next, Ms. Dell.
A. Stevens Dill. First, I would like to point out that Kensington Fire is contributing to the prevention of identity theft by providing free paper shredding this Saturday from 10 to 2 in the parking lot. Last month, I said I thought the police policy manual states that weapons are issued by the department. IGM Hart said that they are not, and when I asked, what does the manual say, he replied, that's what it says. We do not issue weapons. Later, he showed me the policy statement, which says, quote, the department-issued weapon will be a 9mm, 38 caliber, 357 Magnum 40 caliber or 45 caliber handgun. I repeat, the department-issued weapon will be a such and such handgun. Being a bit dyslexic, I interpreted that to mean the department will issue a handgun. Mr. Hart told me that the manual is just an off-the-shelf document that the department tweaks, which I knew. It was purchased from an outfit that sells state-of-the-art law enforcement manuals that can be customized for each client and updated annually as part of the $2,000 a year service contract, which the district has been paying since 2008. On June 19th of last year, IGM Hart submitted his 100-day plan, and one goal was to review and update the manual. That was exactly 300 days ago. I actually counted them. Although there very well may have been modifications made through official memos and directives, they are intra-departmental and not posted on the website. So, until there is a revision, realize that what you read in the posted KPD policy manual, such as that for a ride-along or even the code of ethics, may not be the actual policy of our police department, just consensus best practices. I urge the IGM to complete his update, notify Lexipol of Kensington's current policies, obtain the revised manual, and post it, and have his officers adhere to it or scrap it altogether and write his own.
Come on up.
Gloria Morrison. My comments are on another topic altogether, so I don't know if you want everyone to talk about this, or can I come in with mine? My understanding is Director Rochelle Sheraswat wrote a letter to East Bay Mud requesting WW funds, and I was wondering, was that in the packet, or was it even appropriate? I would really like to know. As a member of the Reserves Committee, I think that might have some interesting information for us. I don't know, anyway, I don't know the status.
When we do comments, I can...
Cool, thank you.
I'm Leonard Schwartzberg. I'm glad that the report is apparently of the Richmond Police Department is apparently going to be released. I didn't think it would be. It surprises me, because there's been a history of cherry picking in terms of what has been done here. And I haven't had a chance to completely read this, but regardless of whether some of these facts are correct or not, that doesn't explain why they somehow stopped this lady outside of Kensington. That doesn't explain why she was targeted, and I believe she was targeted. So, Vanessa's report of Barrow glaring at her is entirely consistent with his behavior towards me. I've been a very strong critic of the way this board has operated, and some of the police have operated. And I say some of the police. There are really good officers on this force, and there are some who are the opposite. My own experience in telling you, Kevin, to keep Barrow away from me because I don't trust his judgment involved your minimizing his action towards her in apparently following her and then stopping her into Berkeley and harassing her causes me to believe you are now part of the culture of cover-up that has and does exist. Jan Berson's letter circulated more than 3 years ago characterized us as a police state. He's not exactly a radical, Jan isn't. It was accurate in the sense that when police act as if they are above the law, that is what it is, a police state. Barrow skates again, and in this you support what clearly seems to be his understandable conviction that in Kensington he is above the law. I've heard people speculate about what he could have on board members that allows him such flagrant acting out, and it's this board that hired him, that hired you. You, Kevin, have, in my opinion, supported criminal action by Ramos in deliberately destroying evidence of a crime and then conspiring with Barrow to falsify the police report. There's video evidence, which you have seen, of the destruction of evidence of a crime, which you tried to absurdly explain as not a crime in violation of the laws of physics. And the report speaks for itself of the collusion between Barrow and Ramos. What are you going to do about this lawless behavior by police officers on your watch? It is also of interest when it comes to collusion that you gave me the choice only of Barrow or Ramos to investigate the crime that was committed against me. The total behavior in this regard leaves me with a very troubling near conviction of who the criminals are. If this board allows this harassment of an elected official to stand unchallenged, then for me, this is the final straw, and Vanessa's claim that the police department is corrupt is true, and so is any majority vote that allows it. And please don't confuse the situation with bogus claims of due process. Where is the due process owed the community? The abhorrent words used by Barrow's mouthpiece to describe Vanessa are reminiscent of the way Kathy was treated by the then majority and their supporters. Character assassination is the modus operandi of the power trippers who have been running these things. Vanessa, have courage. Don't let these people frighten you into paralysis. Continue to fight for your constituents, and you will get support. And if you, the board majority, pass an MOU that is the shell game that the present one is, there are ways to correct that after the next election, as well as a lot of other things.
Mabry Benson here. A very common reason people leave a job is because of their manager or work environment. It often has nothing to do with just money. The board has never, to my knowledge, conducted exit interviews to find out why our employees, particularly the good ones, are leaving. It is impossible for the board not to know that there were serious personnel issues. They should have been looking into these matters rather than just ignoring them. This is another example of their failure of oversight. Getting caught up with the world, I read the Outlook and noted Stephanie Wilkins is Officer of the Year, but I also hope that she wasn't talking about those of us who criticize the police department when she said that there are still people out there that aim to hurt those of us who are here to help. I'd like to say that our criticism has the goal of improving the quality of the Kensington Police. Charging airline tickets for one's wife, visiting an illegal prostitute, and the subsequent poor investigation are examples of behavior that does not suggest we had a department of high quality. Last month I addressed several points at the last meeting, and none of these seem to have been answered. What is the district interest in the officers' guns that the district has helped purchase? Is there going to be any discussion of authorizing a study of our policing needs? Thank you. And I'm well under my 5 minutes. But I have more for the MOU. Okay. No, one more thing. Linda, congratulations. I agree with you on opening up these records of the police, of the investigations of the police committee. Well, maybe not quite a first, but anyway, but the reason I'm saying that, just not to make nice to Linda, let's not go too far. Let's see, I think his name is Mark Leno, has a bill before the Senate Assembly, maybe it's 1236, I forget the number, it's not important, that would open up these complaint records to the public. I urge you all to ask the Senate members to support that bill, because I do think it does the police a disservice when the public cannot know what the results of an investigation. The first question we're going to ask is, what are they hiding? What they're doing is hiding the bad police. It does a real disservice to the good police. So I urge you to support that bill. Still under.
My name's Andrew Gutierrez. I was mentioned in this report by Raines, the language of which was totally unprofessional, and we should be ashamed that it occurred here, and that the Police Officers Association hire such people. I'm more critical about the way they treated my complaint. They say that they interviewed all the people involved. Dr. and Mrs. Foda were not interviewed. They mentioned two people as being the officers involved in that incident. There was only one, and it was Turner. They said that it occurred on the Arlington. We crossed paths just as we were approaching the gate to the Blake estate. I was going south, the other car was going north. It was not dark. They said the taillight was out. To catch me, they had to go all the way around and come back on the Arlington up above Cowper to catch me before I turned to go into Norwood. That means they had to be traveling at a high rate of speed. They say that it was intimidation because of criticism of the police department. I never raised that issue. I just said it was harassment. It was our former illustrious Chief Harmon who put that in the letter. So when you look at the report, it's only a paragraph, but it would be fiction. That's what it is. Now, police departments play PMA. We know that. And this is not Mayberry anymore. It's more like a little Chicago, except we haven't reached the point that we can vote after we're dead. We have nothing to be proud of in this case. Now, the language that's used to describe Vanessa, unprofessional. The incident, as reviewed by another police department, is not trustworthy, and it shouldn't be released. Because, again, PMA, and that means protect my assets. It can be abbreviated, the last word. So, fabrication here. And Ramos gave my son, who was recovering from cancer, he managed to find in the middle of the night the fact that he didn't have his sticker on his license plate. It occurred in the middle of the night. His car was parked legally across the street. How did that occur? The fee had been paid, but the sticker hadn't arrived. Now, mostly, they don't give tickets the same month if you do not have that little sticker, because they realize that those sorts of bureaucratic things occur. But Ramos found it in the middle of the night. I had an accident in front of Young's Market. I got the ticket. My insurance agent complained about it. Unusual. So no, I do not have confidence in this police department, though I recognize that some of these policemen are really nice, loyal, law-abiding people. But some of them are not. And we should be ashamed when we start protecting them. Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on up.
Peter from police here. Before I start, I'd like to know, can I have your assurance?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you need to say your name too, please.
Marilyn Stolen. Before I start. All right, how about this? Is this better? Okay. Before I start, I'd like to know that I'd have an assurance that there will not be any retaliation by the police force for these comments tonight. As most people know, I'm very outspoken, and I've spoken here before, and I'm beginning to have some concerns. I'd like to ask Chuck, Pat, and Len, since you all have KPOA endorsements when you ran in the past, do you endorse the smear tactics of the lawyers for the KPOA? Chuck, will you denounce these defamatory statements in the press release? And will you accept the KPOA endorsement and campaign donations again? And folks, do the KPD deserve a raise, a new MOU in view of these supported tactics? My sense from observing majority actions this year and last year is that this board is not providing oversight to the interim chief and that KPOA is running the town. Regarding the investigation of the Berkeley stop by Richmond Police, in previous board meetings, Interim Chief Hart has repeatedly insisted that the IA investigation will tell us what occurred and that it will be impartial and thorough, that he will get the Richmond investigators' recommendations, and that he, quote, may or may not follow them, end quote. Of course, personnel information would not be released, he said, but he would release as much as he could. I was somewhat encouraged, even though it's police investigating police. This opposed to Sergeant Barrow's in-house investigation by Chief Harmon of the Reno scandal that was reported to be no investigation at all by Interim Chief Hart this year. So tell me, how can you and the IA report have all the relevant information if only KPD cops who weren't there were interviewed, and Berkeley residents on Ensenada who saw the stop occur were not interviewed, nor the smog tester, not even our own board member Rochelle Sheriswat, who publicly verified information, not in the investigation report. Don't look for her name there, it won't be there. Was proper procedure followed? Is it typical for a police chief to leave town the day after a city crisis for a multi-day out-of-town conference, as Interim Chief Hart did, and thus delay filing a citizen's report? Was that perhaps mentioned in Richmond's IA investigation under their recommendation? Or is that considered standard professional ethical behavior for law enforcement management? Did the Richmond investigators have any comment on how the board members handle the situation, their lack of action, their lack of support? Do they have any recommendations? I'll be interested to see these recommendations if this report gets released. Is the press release, which refers to parts of the so-called impartial investigation, an indication of the fabrication that exists in the Richmond IA report? Cops investigating cops, and it is clearly proving to be the second time around the road to litigation, omission of the facts, and a step back for transparent government. We advocate for adherence to the Brown Act, yet the majority board has been consistently maneuvering behind the scenes with quickly scheduled and questionable closed board sessions to approve an MOU in 2015, and most recently to extend the contract of the interim chief. Only after much public outcry was the most recent attempt abandoned. We have irrefutable documentation that several board members were contacted by phone when the 2014 Reno scandal occurred. Yet Pat Gillette told the public at a meeting, and I was there, and it's on the record, it's recorded, that the board knew nothing and was not informed until the investigation was started much later. Fabrication and more fabrication. For this and so many reasons, I have lost faith in this majority board, their lack of honesty, and I believe that the board president, Len Welsh, board members Pat Gillette and Chuck Toombs should step down and resign.
Okay.
No.
No. 15 seconds.
You
No, I
commented
hope
already.
people do not disparage the good name of Mabry by constantly referring to this place as Mayberry, which is a corruption of Mabry.
Come on up.
She asked if she could have 5 seconds of my time. Sorry. Hi, my name's Lori Trevino. So obviously you all have heard all of what Mr. Buffington, I assume that was Mr. Buffington, had to say. that they had released a press release, which is what I'm here to talk about, which was characterizing the internal affairs investigation of Officers Barrow and Ramos related to the traffic stop of Director Cordova. I found this to be just a shameful and disgusting screed and a transparent attempt to smear somebody who's been a longtime resident of this community, and I believe an attempt to divert attention away from some important information that, well, perhaps may come out in the report, though I have to say, based on the contents of the press release, I have to wonder what the strings are that come along with asking the director whether she will agree to have it released. I'm sure there's something that goes along with that. So this press release states that the allegations of harassment and unlawful detention were determined to be unfounded because the traffic stop and fix-it ticket were found to be lawful. As just stated by a previous speaker, the investigator didn't interview all the witnesses. My understanding is that he did not interview anyone who could have validated Ms. Cordova's claims, some of them in this room. If Mr. Hart did consider all the facts when he decided, well, I'm not sure that he had them all. And I'm not sure that it is truly an unfounded, that it was a lawful stop. The press release implies that Ms. Cordova was and had been driving without a license and stated that she did not have valid registration. There is ample documentation that those are factually untrue statements. I can only imagine that means they didn't see that. She had a valid driver's license in her possession. She had a moving permit in her possession when she was stopped. She was not cited for that, not having driver's license, for not having registration. She was cited for having expired tabs. The moving permit was issued on the day of the citation. She was going to get the required smog check to complete her registration, which she was in the process of doing. She was cited for operating without a front license plate. She has never denied that that was a justified citation. She didn't know it was a requirement. She has one now. She never intended to dispute that part of the citation. Some have claimed, and I agree, that this was selective enforcement. There were 4 cars parked just today within close proximity to the police station without front plates. Ironically, one of them is parked right out here today next to Director Cordova's car without a plate. A longtime resident took pictures of all of those, which I've printed out and I will provide to you. Another longtime resident believes that at least 2 of those belong to district personnel. Given that one of them is out here, I think that's probably true. So an officer doesn't cite cars with missing plates in the front of the police station because they belong to friends and colleagues, but they cite the crazy board member, and I'll do my air quotes, while 2.5 miles away from the jurisdiction on a food run in a different county. Sounds like selective enforcement to me. Have any of these vehicles or any other vehicles in Kensington been cited for lacking a front plate? Was that data provided to the investigator? Will it be provided to us? As you may know, the district itself had multiple vehicles without front license plates at the time of this stop, including one that had been owned for the district for years. The black SUV purchased in 2004 didn't have plates until October 19th. The white SUV didn't have plates for some time period, I'm not sure how long, only getting current plates on the 21st of October of that month. I understand there was a reason for this. There was an officer that was out on extended leave for being sick, but I just think this adds insult to injury. The press release goes on to state that the notice of consent exists that allows Kensington officers to to engage in law enforcement in Berkeley. Well, I think that that's a pretty commonplace thing, that kind of agreement exists so that people can cross lines in pursuit. I would love to see any evidence that Kensington Police has ever initiated pursuit of someone in a traffic stop outside of the jurisdiction of Kensington. I don't think it exists. I think it is uncommon, if not non-existent. Yeah, really. And to add to that, the officers, when they're out of jurisdiction, are supposed to call the local jurisdiction to find out where the courthouse address is, where the citation should be filed. Didn't happen. And that citation, I don't believe, has been filed yet in either Contra Costa or Alameda County. So, anyway, I would love to have some examples to show how this was a valid traffic stop. Thank you.
Come on up.
Good evening, Jim Watt. I think this is a very important topic. However, I would like to use my 5 minutes to discuss another issue. Last night, I attended the fire board meeting, and I came away from that meeting rather concerned about the attention that this district is giving to the issue that was discussed at that hearing. And so I'd like to convey to all of you present what it is that I took away from that meeting. The meeting's purpose was to hear from the seismic or the structural engineer that the fire board hired to assess the structural capability of the firehouse. And as we all know, the firehouse is jointly used by both the fire department and the police department. So the implications of that study go well beyond just the fire department, and they actually, of course, include the concerns that we should have as a district here and the potential costs and disruption that could occur as a result of the actions that will need to be taken, and I can assure you there will be actions that will be taken here in an attempt to try to rectify the defects associated with that building. So what I took away from that meeting was this, that I have now been going, I had never gone to fire board meetings until the start of the year, and now I've been going to them religiously every month. And I know from the very first meeting that I attended that the concerns about this building existed then, and I'm sure even prior to that. I'm also aware that, I hope I have his name correctly, Bob Domer, who is the president of the board, has spoken directly with Mr. Welsh and with GM Hart to inform both of them as to his concerns about the potential retrofitting and or replacement of that building. And I'm sure that all of us here as citizens of this community realize the stakes of what it is that we're talking about. What we have here is a building built in 1969 to standards which now no longer apply for seismic safety purposes. This building also has been upgraded, always was, but most recently it's now has the designation of an essential services facility, which means that it has to be brought up to standards considerably higher than those, in fact twice the standards than those that existed in 1969. There have been a few retrofits that have taken place over the years, but those were just partial and just encompassed a small portion of that building. But what this report said last night was that this lady that presented it, the structural engineer, that indeed you do need to do something about this essential service facility. Whether or not that's going to entail a full tear down and rebuild or a major retrofit, we don't know. And they don't know. And they are in the process, the fire board, of studying that, and they expect to have some indication of that within probably the next 4 months. I can assure all of you it's going to be a significant sum of money. It could easily entail the disruption of the police department and the fire department, who may have to move out during the period of the retrofitting. This will cause considerable extra economic costs to the district as we attempt to find a place to relocate the police department, not to mention the fact that when they reoccupy the building, assuming that's the case, I would rather suspect that they will no longer receive the benefit of $1 a year rent. I'm mentioning all this because I happen to be on the Finance Committee, and I'm mentioning it because I also happen to be on the Parks Building Committee, and we have the same problem with this building. We have still some unknown costs as to what it's going to take to fix this building up. We know that there are other parties out there that would like to see more done than just to bring it up to earthquake standards and ADA compliance. So I'm mentioning all these things because we have two major issues here before the district that are going to result in significant economic costs. Yet I have seen very little, if any, discussion of this, certainly not at any of these board meetings. And so I am here to request that GM Hart and perhaps Mr. Welsh and perhaps other board members respectfully put this issue on the agenda such that we can at least bring it to the attention of the public and get the knowledge out there that we have a significant economic cost to us. This economic cost, I should mention, obviously has significant bearing on the other item that we're going to be discussing this evening, which is the MOU. Because if, in fact, we have significant costs associated with both the retrofit...
No, we have to get...
Okay.
Your 5 minutes is up. We have to get moving. I'm sorry.
So I would respectfully request that you bring this to the attention of our next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I respectfully move that we discontinue
I'll handle it, Pat,
public
okay?
comments.
Pat has to leave at, what, 9:30? We have some very important items on the agenda, as you all well know. So I'm going to ask that we suspend public comments for now, get to some of the items on the agenda. If people still want to comment, then we can, later on, we can accommodate the rest of those who want to comment.
And it's not just because I have to leave, but I think several people are here to think about and talk about the MOU, and I'd like to hear those comments since that's a specific item on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, we want to get a full discussion
May I
of
mention
that.
something,
Yeah, go
please?
ahead.
The item regarding the vote on LAFCO, that's also, that'll take 2 minutes. Can we just leave with that? Because that,
No, I want to do the MOU first, and then we can go right to that, okay? So, anybody have any quick comments before we go to the MOU? Anything more from you? Rochelle?
I do, yes. Is this on? Can you hear me? Is that okay? No. It says on. Okay, how about this? Is that better? Oh, yours is, Chuck's is better. Okay, is that better? Good evening. I am the chair of the Park Building Committee, which Gloria mentioned. Last month, the Park Building Committee submitted the WW grant money, and that is through East Bay Regional Parks, Gloria, not through East Bay Mud. So, no, it's no problem. I just wanted to clarify, yeah. And we requested the $158,358. I'm not. But that grant in its entirety appears in last month's agenda packet. So that we will be part of their grant review in late May or early June, and then we will be notified. Last evening, I attended the Fire Board meeting, and I'll just correct Jim. It's the president of the Fire Board is Don Dahmer, and thank you, Larry Nagel, for being here tonight, who is also a Fire Board member, past president, and if any other Fire Board members are here, thank you for coming. They did release, they had Biggs Cardoza and Associates released their station seismic assessment, which is an interesting read, and I will submit it. I imagine it will appear on their website as well.
Yeah, I didn't think I saw it there. Is it going to be up there soon, do you think?
I don't know. You would have to ask the Fire Board.
All right.
They spoke about it last night, so
Okay.
I'm not sure how long.
Okay, great. Anything else?
Yes, just one more. Just a quick question. Is this going to appear in next month's agenda? Is that
No.
will happen? No, it will not be.
I'm not putting a press release on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, we have nothing to do with that press release. That came from the
I just
attorney
after
law firm.
submission,
Okay.
I was not clear whether
that's
the
fine.
intention was to submit this for the record.
I don't know. He
said that. I believe he said that, didn't he?
Did he say
said
that?
what?
He did, yes. That okay. Put in the record.
Yeah, in the record. Yeah.
So-
It's in the record because it was
It will
submitted.
appear in next.
In the record, not on the agenda.
No, excuse me. Yes, in our agenda packet. I apologize.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, anything that gets submitted has to go into
Of
the
course,
record.
yes. That's what I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify.
I'm glad you did.
Yes. Therefore, I submit to the record my response to the Rains Lucia Stern press release dated April 12th, 2016 for submission to the record. Thank you. Oh, one more, sorry, last thing. Park Buildings will have another meeting. It's not scheduled yet, but it'll probably be in the next few weeks, so we'll try and get that on the website and alert everyone well in advance. so that all are welcome.
Anybody else? I just want to say one thing real quickly. My understanding, and Larry, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I talked with Mr. Dummer, he said your intention was to have like a town hall where all this stuff would be discussed, all this issues about the public safety building and the different possibilities that are under consideration. And he was estimating that would be end of May, sometime in June, something like that?
That's correct.
Okay, so that I think is the point at which we dig into the different alternatives, and the community becomes, fully aware, as the rest of us, what's going on with this. Okay, let's go to the MOU. Then I want to move that up because Pat's going to leave, and frankly, I don't know how much longer I'm going to last. I hurt my back, and I'm really in pain right now. So I'm going to skip over the consent calendar, and I'd like to go directly to item 7B. The board will receive a report regarding a proposed contract with the Kensington Police Officers Association and the KPPCSD. So we'll be reviewing that and possibly voting the proposal up or down. Could we begin, Adam, with a quick summary from you? Would that work?
Absolutely. Evening, directors. Thank you for letting us be here today. There was a one-page document that was... Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. There's a one-page high-level summary document. That sounded like it worked. It was not included in the initial agenda packet, but it was handed out as a supplemental document. It just has the high-level economic parameters that are included in the KPOA tentative MOU. There are some extra copies up here as well.
Is there a page number?
It's not in the agenda packet, but there are copies here.
Can I get a copy?
We're on page 70, 98.
Yeah, if you have the agenda packet, the MOU starts on page 98, and then there are some supplemental documents that I'll go through as well that are in the back of the MOU starting on page 116. But first, let me start with this high-level summary document. The term of the MOU that's before the board is 42 months in duration. That's 3.5 years. It would run effective July 1, 2014 through December 31, 2017. That 3.5-year period is with a look back covering the time period for which the MOU has been expired. On wages, this agreement would provide no wage increase from July 1, 2014 through February 29, 2016. It would then provide a 3% across-the-board increase plus a $1,000 non-recurring lump sum payment effective March 1, 2016. And in the third year of the agreement, it would provide a 3% across-the-board increase effective March 1, 2017. The agreement, at the same time that the 3% across-the-board increases are being granted, the agreement will require employees for the first time who are defined as classic members. Right now they pay nothing towards their pension. This would for the first time require them to contribute initially 2% effective March 1, 2016, and then they would contribute an additional 2% for a total of 4% effective March 1, 2017. On the active employee medical side, under Section 4A, effective January 1, 2017, employees would be required, all employees, regardless of the coverage level that they're electing, would be required to contribute $85 per month towards the cost of health care coverage. Effective 6 months later, all employees would be required to contribute a minimum of $125 per month towards the cost of their health care, which means the district would no longer pay 100% of the Kaiser Bay Area premium. We would only pay the Kaiser Bay Area premium less the employee contribution of $125. Because of the requirements that CalPERS places on public agencies, this would also carry through to our annuitants. So our retirees, both pre and post Medicare eligible, would also contribute the $125 or the $85 when that is first implemented. Number 6, holidays. We are moving the current birthday holiday to Cesar Chavez Day. There's no new cost to that. It's just a renaming of a previous holiday. And then on the safety equipment, again, that's not a change, but we are keeping the existing language that would allow safety equipment to be reimbursed up to $250 per year for $750 over this duration. So that's the high-level parameters. Again, beginning on page 98, that's the Interim General Manager Hart's summary memorandum. Beginning on page 99 is the actual text of the MOU. And if I can turn your attention briefly to page 116, we've provided some supplemental analysis. This was information that we discussed with the KPOA, and that has been shared in previous open session last month, as well as with the Finance Committee. This document is as of June 30, 2015, and it shows an analysis of total compensation for the rank of police officer here in Kensington relative to a number of agencies, including Berkeley, Albany, the Broadmoor Police Protection District, which is the only other true police protection district in the state, the Central Marin Police Authority. We did look at park police officers with the East Bay Regional Park District, El Cerrito, Moraga, Piedmont, and the city of Richmond. The results of that analysis showed that from a total compensation perspective, KPPCSD police officers were about 4.2% behind market median, 5.9% behind market average, and that includes an assessment for medical coverage as well as retiree health care. If you look at page 117, it is the same exact analysis presented on page 116, except that I isolated for only those agencies that are non-municipalities, so special districts. And what we found here is that when you compare Kensington to Broadmoor, Central Marin, and East Bay Regional Parks, our position improves, and we go from being 4.2% behind market median to being about 3.7% above market median. Again, that's a relatively small group of employers to be looking at. Most of the time you look around roughly 10 agencies from a comparison perspective, but it does illuminate the fact that from a special district comparison perspective, the compensation is above market. On the page 118, the back of that document, there is a comparison of an El Cerrito firefighter compensation to a Kensington police officer compensation, and we found that they were practically the same, with the Kensington police officer being about 1.5% behind El Cerrito firefighters. Again, using the same methodology. On page 119 in the agenda packet, you will see a comparison of what I'd like to call market movement. So we had looked at a previous analysis done by a member of the community for the cities of Moraga, Tiburon, Belvedere, Clayton, and Ross. And we wanted to give a sense of what types of deals and packages they're negotiating right now. So what this shows is any MOU that we're reaching these communities, it shows the wage increase and then the any givebacks that employees are giving on EPMC. And I provided sort of what I call the average annual net gain, just so you can see, relatively speaking, how much each contract is changing over whatever duration MOU is being proposed here. So you can see that ours, given that it's a 3.5-year deal, and I'm actually missing 6 months of this because I did this analysis before the contract was out through December 31, I estimated that it's approximately a 1% net cost, and this is very rough, high number. You know, the 3% in wage increase minus the 2% give back would practically net you a 1% gain. Using that same methodology in each of these jurisdictions, I found that Moraga would give a net increase per year, an average annual net gain of about 3.25%. Tiburon was 3%, Belvedere was 1%, Clayton was 1%, and Ross was 2%. And similarly, they had a phase-in of employee health care contributions that ended up being somewhat similar to what is in this tentative deal, except that their contributions would get to $105 per month per employee by July of 2018. So we're getting to $125 as of June 30, 2017, so somewhat sooner than that. Page 120 in the agenda packet shows the costing analysis that I developed. This was shown again at the last open session as well as at the Finance Committee. This analysis shows the first column is an estimate of our budget, what we had put aside in the 15-16 budget. The FY 15-16 forecast column shows an estimated impact of the initial parameters of this deal. So it includes a one-time, non-recurring payment of $9,000, so each officer is projected to get $1,000. It captures a prorated amount for the 3% cost of living adjustment that's included effective March 1. So it's effectively 1/4 of a year of that full year impact of that 3% increase. It also shows at the bottom under employee concessions the net savings that we would receive from employees beginning to pay 2%. And again, I've annualized that, prorated that to only reflect the 3 months that we would expect to get it. Some of this is changing now because of the timing of the actual deal. Also, just draw your attention to the pepper wages, the second line from the top. We do have one employee who was employed with the district at the time that this analysis was put together, no longer with us. That employee was expected to be with the district for only 8 months out of the fiscal year. So that $51,000 in pepper wages reflects the 8 months of their salary. In the next year, in the fiscal 15-16-17 forecast, you see a big bump from 51 to 77,000, but that's really just a factor. It does include the 3% increase, but it is a factor mainly of the fact that this person, I estimated them to be here for a full year in FY 16-17. This document shows that the majority of cost increase is driven by our PERS rate growth. If you look in the center under benefits, there's a section on CalPERS benefits. What I did here was capture the existing PERS forecasted rates. These do assume that our discount rate is met. It looks like that might not happen. There might be a miss. So those rates could go up. There's a risk that that does happen. If you look under employer UAAL plus side fund, that's where we account for our unfunded liability. As a small agency, we're in a risk pool. So our side fund is now carved out from the employer rate and it's expressed as a flat dollar amount. In FY 18-19, you see a significant drop in the employer UAL when we pay off the side fund. So the side funds were created when you had when the risk pools were initially created. So you see about $73,000 in savings from FY 17-18 to 18-19. That's a result of us paying off the side fund. So what you see overall in this deal is that the net cost is relatively low. It's relatively net neutral compared to status quo. There's not much in terms of new cost here. Again, the first year cost really driven.
Could I stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
Net neutral compared to the status quo. Could you just,
I'm sorry.
for everybody's benefit, could you explain exactly what you mean by that?
If we did nothing, this contract would still, if we did nothing, personnel costs would still increase, driven predominantly by growth in healthcare costs. So each year we get a new set of rates from CalPERS. Last year, the Kaiser rate, I think, went up 4.5%. The year before that, I think it went down by about 3%. My forecast assumes a 5% annual growth in our healthcare rate, as well as in our retiree medical rate.
So if we, in other words, if we, entering into this MOU will not add cost vis-a-vis the current agreement we're under going month to month.
That's right. So the current agreement, the parameters of that carry forward. So we're still operating under the terms of the old MOU. Our analysis, our assessment of the economic parameters of this contract showed that there's really no new cost associated with this deal. The overall wage growth that you see is offset by the savings that you get on the employee giveback of pension, as well as both the active employee and our current retired employee contributions towards health care.
Can you wait, please? Let him finish.
On page 120.
Go ahead.
Is there a difference between no new cost and no greater cost?
The question is there a difference between no new cost and whether the total costs are greater? You mean versus the current agreement we're under? You get that?
Costs will go up. So the costs will, this contract does not raise costs above what is the status quo. So if we do nothing, there are going to be new costs associated with personnel costs going up, healthcare and pension rates going up. This contract, this MOU, does not add new costs above the status quo.
The status quo meaning the current agreement that we
The
are
carry
extending month
forward.
to month.
Are we stuck with the old terms?
If we don't do the new MOU, are we stuck with the old terms is the
I'm going
question.
to turn it over to the lawyer.
That's a lawyer question. So the answer is no, if you took a position and you then, and the union didn't agree, let's say, you still would have legally, I'm just talking legally and hypothetically here, you would have the legal right to impose a contract on the union over its objection after you completed all of the impasse procedures that are required by the Myers-Milius-Brown Act. So
And how long would that take, roughly?
It's generally about 6 months to get through those procedures, and it includes the fact-finding as well, which generally not only takes time but money. And of course, the real difficulty is when you impose a contract, you can only impose for 1 year. So it doesn't fix very much of anything because you're right back at the bargaining table almost immediately.
The bargaining table. So it's not inevitable that the costs have to go up after that?
Well, it's not inevitable in a lot of ways. You could have, this is theoretical again, you could have an agreement where the union agreed that in addition to having no net gain basically over 3 years of a contract, this is theoretical, that they'll actually give you money back. You could, that is theoretical. I consider myself a really good negotiator. Those are very tough contracts to negotiate. I've done it. I've done it in Stockton, which was bankrupt. I did it in Vallejo, which was bankrupt. And quite frankly, during the depths of the recession, there were a number of contracts where employees actually did give money back. But it's pretty unusual.
Okay, well, Adam, why don't you finish? I'm sorry, I just wanted to, I thought that question kind of represented what's on people's minds, but. The question is on page 120. I'm afraid people can't hear you, so I'm trying to repeat your question. So on page 120, the line item that
Yes, so we actually, just to be clear, police officers in California typically do not participate in Social Security. So that's usually the biggest chunk of payroll tax that you see. It's roughly 6.2%. They do participate in Medicare, which I have on here. It's the bottom line under benefits, right above total benefits. That's the only payroll tax that you'll see. There would be some of those taxes. They are expressed often as a percentage of payroll, but they're not going to grow at significant amounts. And I will double check how much that is.
Can you just repeat her question so people can hear?
So I think she's asking about the unemployment tax and where is that accounted for on this document. So again, Lynn, did you?
I'm asking if, when you do public comments, could people go to the microphone?
Well, I really didn't want to do public comments yet. I just want to kind of point of clarification thing, because I think
so
the questions being asked are
the question is
representative
about
of what people are thinking.
payroll taxes and where are those reflected. My response was, I'm capturing Medicare. So payroll taxes broadly would include items like Social Security, FICA, Medicare, and unemployment insurance. Medicare is reflected on here. I want to go back and research the unemployment question that she's asked. I did not include that on here. I want to check how the amount that we're currently paying, and before I give you any information. But I do know that Kensington police officers do not participate in Social Security, which is the biggest piece of what most people think of, generally speaking, of when they talk about payroll taxes in general. But you're right, there could be increases if there was a spike in unemployment. Unemployment rates do go up, absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, but that would happen either way, right?
That would happen to anyone, and I, in my experience, I would not cost unemployment against a contract in this sense, because it's going to be an expense that happens anyway. Certainly, if you think there's a risk in an out year, you might want to capture some growth in that. But it would be, I think in this circumstance, it would not materially affect the overall results. Because it is, like you said, a pretty small percentage, and if it goes up, it's not going to go up dramatically. It's very small. I'm sure that it's in the budget. This is a separate costing document.
Okay, and you want to move on?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Turning to page 121, this is the last document that involves numbers. It is a comparison of the old tentative agreement that was not approved by the board relative to this package proposal. And it's a very high-level comparison of each of the terms in the major items: wages, employer-paid member contribution givebacks, and health care. And what it shows is that over the same duration, the old tentative agreement would have raised wages. There would have been net cumulative increase of about 5%, whereas this one is about 0.32%, and that's with my assumption for healthcare inflation cost. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Well, you've been doing that all along. Very good. So, I want board people to ask first if you have any questions.
I wonder what the inspiration was for comparing police agencies to fire agencies, particularly and specifically El Cerrito.
I actually think that I may have asked that question originally because we wanted to compare El Cerrito, since you're essentially kind of right here. I mean, we did not, in general, compare police and fire agencies, and normally it's not a great comparison.
It's not a great comparison.
No, I absolutely. But I was interested.
We seem to be relying heavily on it.
No, not at all. We are relying significantly on the overall comparison universe, which is all police agencies.
Actually, if I remember correctly, I was just curious. I wanted to know, and maybe you jumped on it.
That's right.
But that's not a dispositive factor. Anybody else on board have any questions or comments?
I only asked because it's my understanding that firefighters don't receive retiree health care. Correct me if I'm wrong, but...
And actually, that was, I think, one of the...
El Cerrito Fire Department retirees do not receive retiree. They receive an allowance, which is different.
And actually, I think this was the reason why the board had asked us to look at this, was because that question had come up, or that statement had come up previously in comparing, and I think many of those comments were coming from the public, not from the board directly, but in comparing and reviewing the El Cerrito contract, they were looking at retiree medical and saying...
Fire police.
I'm sorry, El Cerrito Fire.
Okay.
They were looking at that saying they don't have access to a retiree health care program. We do. And when I looked at the data, what I do see is a defined contribution account, which is also known as a retiree health savings account. And when you compare those two items, the difference is really not all that significant when you look at normal costs relative to our normal cost for the defined benefit that we provide on retiree medical. It's a difference of $150. So it's structured different, $150 per month.
A month, okay.
So it's structured differently. It's more advantageous for an employer to have a defined contribution account because the risk is placed on the employee. In a defined benefit account, the risk certainly stays with the employer. And we've had discussions about this many times, we do know that there is certainly some risk in our OPEB and the generous benefit that we offer, but it would not be accurate to say that they're not provided with the retiree medical benefit.
But the cost would work out to be $1,800 per firefighter per year, is that right?
No,
I mean, a firefighter, not per, $1,800 more, less, excuse me, per firefighter than police.
150 times 12, yeah, so $1,800.
$1,800, okay.
Yeah, but we also looked at the costs of El Cerrito Police, and that would be a more relevant comparison, wouldn't it?
Let me just make sure we did. Yes, we did. They're also in here. They are, if you look, they're about midway. They rank, El Cerrito Police ranked 4 out of the 10. They had a total comp of 11,341. And and Kensington was at 10,575. So there's that. And also, just to be clear, part of the issue with the Kensington fire analysis was that the fire board, and I know that someone here is from the fire board, so you can speak to this as well, but if you look at the CAFR for the fire board, it shows that they are almost 100% funded in their retiree medical side. And that is because they no longer have a benefit. They no longer have a defined benefit plan. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. There's very limited exposure. There's no new exposure for the fire district, and they had excess money and were able to fully fund that benefit immediately to cover the cost. And when you close a plan, the actuarial rules change and the funding rules change, and you really have to begin to do that. So it's not a very good comparison. So that is kind of where this discussion came from.
Any more board questions or comments? Wait, I want the board first. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You want me to just finish mine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I want to go to the safety equipment clause. So to me, this looks like redundant funding. We've just increased the line item or the budget last time around to fund some new safety equipment, and now I see a safety equipment allowance here that's $250 up to $750 per officer, which, let me ask it this way. The reimbursed monies to the officers, if they spend $750 on a custom-made vest, does the district own that vest, or does the police officer own that vest?
I think we could probably ask the chief, but generally speaking, when you have an allowance as opposed to a reimbursement, you are actually providing that, and it usually does belong to, and that's just in general when you have an allowance that the person could, if they went someplace else.
And I ask because Adam used the word reimbursement, so I just want to make sure that I understand that.
Okay, Chief, can you clear that up?
What was the question?
The question is, if they have it's a $250 allowance for safety equipment. So the district's approach to that in the past has been they get the money, and if they spend it appropriately, they get to keep what they buy. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it does not belong to the district. It's an allowance that they do up to. And since I've been here, I believe only 4 officers have submitted any request for reimbursement since I've been here in the last 10, 11 months. So it's not being used entirely, and and it's an allowance, so they can use it up to.
Let me ask you this, is it use it or lose it? Is that, because an allowance is very different from reimbursable. Reimbursable, I give you a receipt, I say, I purchased this, pay me back.
Correct.
Is that how it happens?
So if a receipt is submitted, and up to the $250, but if they don't use it, they are allowed pursuant to the MOU to push that out up to $750 max.
Okay, so what's your question, Vanessa? You said he's not answering your question.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay.
I didn't say that at all. He's answering the question.
Are you okay?
Yeah, so it's reimbursable. That's all I wanted to know. It's not an allowance, meaning they don't get a check for $750.
No.
They're reimbursed.
No, it has to be approved by the general manager.
And if they buy a gun, for instance, the district does not own that gun. Is that correct? All right.
That's correct.
I have a comment. I support this agreement, and again, I thank the negotiating team for doing what I think was a really spectacular job, and I think the police officers are here tonight for also trying to come to an agreement. I think the fact that the officers will not have a wage increase from July 1 through 2014 through February 29, 2016 is significant and something that I think is a big bonus for us as a district. And I think the fact that we have a short duration on this contract is really important, because what it means is we have stability through the time it would take if we decide to change the configuration of our district, whether that be through contracting out, changing through consolidation, or through some other change of the district. So giving us some stability and giving the police officers some stability through that time, I think makes sense. The chances of us making a decision on what the district will look like prior to November of 2016, I don't think is very high. And this would go for one more year after that, which would give us a chance to have a smooth transition. So many thanks to the negotiating team. It is interesting that this is the first time, I think, in Kensington we've had professional negotiators doing our contract, and I think it made a real difference in terms of the analysis. I also think that the cost of this contract is so minimal to the district that it makes sense to be able to attract the best officers to our district, to keep our good officers that we have here, and to begin to repair the relationships. So many thanks to everyone involved.
Anybody else on the board? Chuck, go ahead.
I have a couple of comments here. I actually sat third seat on this. John and Adam took the laboring oar here, as was their task. Throughout this, though, I came to a couple of conclusions about what this means. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm sorry, my microphone's a little goofy. Not me, the microphone, just in case you misunderstood that. The point is, this is a revenue-neutral agreement. We're going to incur costs whether we pass this MOU or not. The MOU itself imposes a minimal 0.32% spread between the pay increase of revenue, of raises given versus employee paid, member contributions given back and healthcare costs given back. It really is almost a zero-sum game. It's a step in the right direction, with current officers beginning to contribute towards their pension costs and healthcare costs for the first time. It will result in cost savings because retirees will have to start contributing towards healthcare costs as well, in the same way that the rank and file does. It's the wave of the future, with all cities giving non-perishable additions plus modest perishable salary increases and getting cost-sharing contributions back. It's a fair contract because both the bargaining unit, it's a fair contract both for the bargaining unit and for the citizens of Kensington. Neither side got exactly what it had hoped for. That's what negotiations often result in, and we were no different. But it is essentially a fundamentally fair agreement to all sides. It is time sensitive in that it lasts just long enough for the community to decide what the future type of services will look like. The ad hoc committee will hopefully be done with this work by this summer, and if there are changes in the nature of police services provided, the district will have to meet and confer with a bargaining unit over any transition and deal with other aspects of any proposed transition. Given this timeline, the MOU will likely expire right around the time any proposed transition should become effective, if that's what the next board or this board decides it wants to do. And delaying the MOU will only delay the costs as time goes by. Positions may change, they may harden, it may become even more costly than what this is. I do support this MOU. I think it's fair and reasonable. I think it's cost neutral, and I think it is a very good proposition for both sides. PERSable. Pensionable. If I give you a raise and you're an officer of $100, I also have to pay the PERS contribution on top of it, which is another $45. So I just created an obligation through giving you a raise of an additional $45. If I pay your health plan, that's a different cost that's non-PERSable. If I give you a $1,000 one-time contribution, that's also non-PERSable. So I don't have that burden on top of the salary increases. And that's what people are doing these days. They're looking for ways to give a benefit that doesn't cost them with PERS contributions. They're also looking for ways to get back from the rank and file towards the cost. That is the future.
Just a minute.
I'd rather hear the public and then make comment after. I want to.
I just want to make sure everybody first the board had a chance to speak out. If you want to wait, that's fine.
I don't have questions.
Okay. All right. You got to get in line. Yeah.
There's always a line, Leonard. President Welsh and honorable board members, members of the public, I urge you strongly to vote on the proposed police MOU this evening and to pass it. This is a revenue-neutral contract proposal which will provide stability to Kensington. You and the police union representatives are all to be congratulated for arriving at an expense-neutral contract. I especially wish to thank our officers for their patience in having this contract renegotiated and presented so long after the initial negotiations began in year 2013. The proposed MOU saves from 20 to 24% for officers and sergeant salaries when compared with the average base salaries of our four surrounding cities of Albany, El Cerrito, Berkeley, and Richmond. I've given you good documentation on that, on the current rates in sister cities in the past at 2 meetings. And let's face it, folks, we are not going to be contracting out with Clayton, Moraga, or the falling apart Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. They're not coming over the hills to serve here. The proposed salaries in the Kensington MOU are more than 20% lower than El Cerrito's base salaries. In neighboring El Cerrito, during the 2-year period of 2014 through 2016, similar to this, salaries have been and will be raised by 16.5%, so that the employees can give back those wages in part by paying them into the CalPERS system for retirement and medical benefits. 16.5%, folks. In addition, nearby cities will implement raises ranging from 2% in Berkeley to 4.5% over these already higher salaries. The MOU before you presents far more savings to Kensington and indicates why we should not buy into the El Cerrito contract. Indeed, our own fire department contract with El Cerrito shows that Little Kensington is bearing just a couple of points shy of 30% of the entire El Cerrito Fire Department budget. Do you realize that? That Kensington is paying that portion of the entire El Cerrito Fire Department budget. We do not want to repeat that mistake with the police contract. The structure of the proposed MOU includes employee participation in both medical and pension contributions. This structural change works towards the implementation of the PEPR laws, which will be in full effect in year 2018. I truly congratulate all parties on that change, and I urge you strongly Do not risk violations of various government code sections such as 3505.1 by failing to give this an up or down vote. And I urge you to vote yes on it.
Good evening, Jim Watt again. I have a handout, so it's one page, so just pass it around. I have a handout. I'm sorry I didn't bring more for the rest of you because it might be a little hard to follow what I'd like to say. I know that this is a bit of an exercise in futility. It's pretty clear from board statements where this MOU is going. Nevertheless, I think it is very important that you hear what's called the other side of the story, and that's what's contained in the materials that I'm passing out. Adam, by the way, this may take me a little bit more than 5 minutes, but Maria has offered to give me her 5 minutes. So usually that's the way it does work, actually.
Let's just get to it. It's very important. We're already rushing this.
You know, well, look, let's start at the beginning here. There have been a lot of comments here about salaries here being below other jurisdictions. You know, don't worry about our revenues outpacing our expenditures. That we have trouble attracting new officers, and I'd like to address all of those. I'd like to start, however, with the handout that I have here, the back of on one page, which shows a big table with some information at the top. It's shown right here. I'm sorry that the rest of you don't have it. But basically, this is a study that I did back in December. It's on the website of the ad hoc committee, and what it says is that I compared the communities against Kensington against 5 other communities: Moraga, Clayton, Tiburon, Belvedere, and Ross, primarily because they shared a lot of the same demographics and a very low incident of violent crime. They were also small and had a very small police force. What I found, and at the bottom of that table you will see, that when you average up all of the costs that we are paying for the categories of salary, overtime, PERS, medical retiree, you will see that in Kensington, the average of the 10 officers, including the chief, that we are paying for our police force is $205,000. The average for the other 5 communities, $167,000. Why do these numbers seem so different from what Adam talked about? Well, it has a lot to do with methodology. When Adam compares a step against a step of another community, that doesn't really tell you much, because what we have here in Kensington is a police force with a lot of senior officers. Officers that are the rank of corporal of above occupy 50% of our police force. They get paid well. In fact, if you turn now to the next page, I might as well just drop right down to the second bracketed thing, which is the salary of the 8 officers that are on the force, excluding the chief and excluding the new hire. You will see that the total annual payments that we are making to those officers, as shown by that circled number, the average salary is $95,000. That doesn't include the overtime. You include the overtime for this year, you're adding another $10,000 per officer, so we're at $105,000. But it's $95,000 today. With this MOU, you add 6.09% to that number, and you drive that average salary for our police officer up to $101,600. Now I'd like to go back up to the top part of this back page, where we're talking about the total expenditures outpacing total revenues. Based upon that same study that I said has been out there on the website, total revenue during the period 2006-2015 for this district has increased at a compounded rate of 2%. When you take out the Measure G revenue that we got in 2010. Total expenditures, on the other hand, have been increasing at a compounded rate of 6.5%. So on balance, what we're seeing is that the expenditures are outstripping our revenue stream. Now, that isn't the case in the last 2 years, where we have enjoyed the benefit of a significant increase in our tax revenue as a result of property values going up. But the trend over time, as shown down in the bottom table there, excuse me, I don't have it. I didn't put it in this particular report. But the trend over time has been a much slower rate, because from 2009 through 2011, it was actually negative increases in our revenue stream. Now I'd like to go down to what this MOU is providing for our existing officers. If you look at the third bracketed thing down there, you will see that we are actually increasing total salaries here as a result of this 6.09% raise by a total of almost $60,000 when you multiply that times their existing salary. If you take that number and assume that that number will become pensionable, that 75% of that will actually translate into pension income.
Jim, you got to finish up, please.
Can I use this time that's been allotted to me?
No, that's not.
I've seen this done.
A lot of time to talk about the statistics.
I'm probably no more than a couple minutes more.
All right, go ahead.
All right. What I'd like, what I would like to point out here is that we have actually increased our pensionable income here by about $60,000. If we assume that that's $60,000, that these officers, when they retire, that they will probably get 75%, a very conservative number, as part of their pension, that means that we will be, in fact, obligated for almost $38,000 for the rest of their retired lifespan. If we deduct out the amount of money that we are getting back in the way of medical from those 9 officers, which is $13,500, we end up with a positive benefit to these officers, total officers now, this is all 8 of them, of $24,000 annually. If you multiply that $24,000 over the expected lifetime that these officers will enjoy that of 30 years, that amounts to $726,000 of pension benefits that they receive as a result of this contract. For 8 officers, that's basically an average of about $80,000.
Okay, Jim, you got to finish up. I'm sorry.
So
other people want to comment.
I would just like to point out, this is not a situation where these officers are being penalized. But most important, this is the main point I want to make here. As I mentioned at my remarks earlier this evening, this community is facing some significant potential costs here with this building and with the police. These costs are unknown. Until we have a clear understanding of what those costs are, we cannot rightfully say that we have a clear understanding of the costs of this MOU. Thank you.
Come on up. Who's next? Somebody in?
I just wanted to point out one thing, Adam, and that is when comparing the El Cerrito firefighters and their benefits with our police officers, there are no dependents who get any health benefits. Only the retiree who gets a lump sum each month. Benefits do not go to dependents. The other thing I'd like to point out here is that every time we have asked for some type of change, some ability to try something new, we are told repeatedly that we have an ad hoc committee that has been appointed and that there are findings that we are expecting. And I think that in the case of this MOU, that should also follow. You have essentially frozen any kind of change in the district, and I think that you should also freeze the MOU, and it should not be voted on.
One very quick point. You actually are legally required under 3505.1 to vote on the contract tonight. So you can vote up or down, but you are required to vote tonight.
Okay. Good evening. When I walked in, I saw this. Pardon me? I'm Carl Kruger. I also am a member of the Finance Committee and have been for a number of years. When I walked in, I saw a sign up there that says, brevity accepted. So I'm willing to be very brief. Those who were here last month or who went to the Finance Committee meeting you're kind of going to hear the same thing that I said before. I'm asking the board, I'm strongly asking the board to support this MOU. We've been without a contract with our officers since July of 2014. If I had negotiated the contract, I would have done some other things, but I wasn't asked to negotiate the contract. We ended up with a contract that is revenue neutral, and I think that's probably the best we could do. I object to a couple of items that are in the contract, and hopefully we will face them with the next contract. We only talk about a year and a half. I think that 14 holidays is very excessive. And the thing is, if we would have got 10 holidays, it would have very little financial impact on the officers, but it would have a financial impact on the district. My main point is, when you talk about fairness, how can you go without a contract for the period of time that we have gone without a contract? If any of you were the employee and you had an employer who treats you this poorly, you decide to look for another employer. I'm happy that the contract is revenue neutral. I don't want to face the officers and say we want to delay things. What do we want to delay things for? The ad hoc committee. We had an MOU 6 months ago, 7 months ago. Something else happened. Then we objected to the person who negotiated for the officers. It's not our decision who negotiates for the officers. The officers make that decision. So if any of you feel any kind of fairness, you will vote and accept this contract. Thank you.
That's enough of that, please.
Pardon me? Is this going to work right here?
No, you got to get close to the microphone.
Closer?
There you go.
All right.
Can you state your name, please?
Gail Tapscott.
Thanks.
I want to read something that's short. I received it on an email this morning, or this week, and it mirrored what I said at a finance committee meeting last week, but they articulated much better than I could. So I'm going to read it. And it's from an attorney, a retired attorney with the Alameda County and a Kensington resident. Kensington has had a tentative agreement that for whatever reason, the police union decided they would renegotiate. Instead of filing an unfair labor practice charge with PERP, that's the Public Employees Retirement Board. Kensington then hired one of the best law firms in the state to negotiate in its behalf and has essentially come up with a revenue-neutral agreement. While there may have been many complaints that it should be less benefits and less wages, that is not the reality. And to refuse this revenue-neutral agreement, in my view, would invite an unfair labor practice by PERB, who would have a dim view of Kensington given all the politics these past few years of the Kensington's position. I know that there are some who would argue in favor of lower benefits and higher wages, but higher wages bring higher pension benefits. I think Chuck talked about that. And for whatever reason, this is in favor what the police wanted. In my view, Kensington got the best it could get, remembering that there are two sides to agreement. A settlement means that neither side got what they wanted. Now, I was at the meeting where I attended the Finance Committee meeting last week, and there was back and forth, the same back and forth I'm hearing right now, and basically they approved the agreement. But I questioned the Finance Committee's approval, why the board needed their agreement. I saw the cart before the horse. We elect a board to negotiate a contract and not a committee to approve negotiation. There are unintended consequences when a finance board looks at an agreement only through the prism of finance, and especially with the politics involved, where some members really would prefer us to have outside agencies. It is nice to have the appearance of the support from a committee, but I would hope in the future that if the board needs to feel the necessity to run it by a committee, that they do it prior to negotiations and and get the perimeters of what's affordable, but not after the fact, because you've already made your contract. Knowing the history of these negotiations, I was concerned that the community would face another lawsuit based on the law requiring us bargaining in good faith. If the board doesn't pass this, it would be because they are faced with an onslaught of negative comments from citizens who don't want the agreement because they don't want the Kensington Police doing Kensington job anymore. They want it outsourced. Let's just face it. I have another comment that I would like to read too, that the guy mentioned in his reasons for support. He says, the second argument is that an MOU should not be entered into pending the committee's recommendation, which may include a suggestion to the board that Kensington contact an outside agency. First, we know that the county and El Cerrito and likely UC Berkeley pay higher wages than Kensington. Thus, it would be difficult to get the same services for less. More importantly, case law establishes that you cannot simply replace Kensington officers to do the same work by an outside agency. There would be requirement to meet and confer with the existing officers on the terms of the conditions. I'll get this right, on the terms and conditions of their department.
Gail, are you almost finished?
I'd like equal time.
I know, I understand. I'm just asking, are you almost finished?
I'm almost done.
Okay, thanks.
And more importantly, a reasonable demand of their being hired by a new entity. My guess, this would take a minimum of 6 months, assuming no unfair practice charges filed. There would also have to be negotiations with the new entity and Kensington over the new agreement, as the amount of the services provided, as well as the level of services or staffing. In my view, this would take a minimum of 6 months, probably longer, as it would involve the entire community. In addition, assuming that the new entity is going to assign its officers to Kensington, that would be another 3 months to meet and confer. From today's date, it will take at least 3 months for the committee to make its final decision to the board, and more time for the board to agree on the same.
Gail, I'm sorry, you really have to finish up.
All right. Basically, what I'm saying is we need to, by law, we need to make a contract. It's as simple as that.
Good evening. Gail Feldman, President of the Kensington Property Owners Association. I believe we are the original KPOA. I think we preceded you. Anyway, just to let you know, I have several members of my board here. This is a statement from our board, and I'll read it, and I'll give Lynn a copy. The Kensington Property Owners Association applauds the board for listening to the community and returning to the negotiation table in 2015. We also commend the Police Officers Association for renegotiating terms of the contract. The MOU presented to the KPPCSD board represents the first steps towards employee cost sharing of health care and pension benefit costs. We hope there is an understanding that Kensington property owners cannot continue to cover the lion's share of the benefit cost, along with the long-term liability risks for excellent benefits that the district provides to its employees. There will need to be a higher level of cost sharing in order to contain costs within our limited tax resources. According to the figures provided by the district's financial consultant, the cost of a police officer as a result of the adoption of this MOU will be almost $9,000 more per officer by December 31st, 2017. The total cost increase from July 2014 to December 2017 is estimated at $129,000, which also includes the cost for the retirees' medical insurance and unfunded liability. KPOA is evaluating district revenue and expense, including the impact of this MOU for affordability into the future. The Kensington community needs to understand the related impacts and trade-offs of the agreements. We need to reconsider spending commitments that are not affordable, that do not deliver the necessary value, and tie our hands with respect to necessary projects for community benefits. We would like to know, will property tax revenue growth keep up or even outpace the cost of police salary and benefits, and by how much? If the district has sufficient property tax revenue growth to support this increase in police salaries and benefits, will funding also be available for increases in district expenses, set aside for reserves, or funding to support the community center rehabilitation or other unanticipated expenses? Would the district consider the MOU to be affordable if every new tax dollar is needed to support this MOU? We thank you for listening to the board's the KPOA board comments and recommendations, and we look forward to further collaboration in the future.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Doro. As Gail Tapscott mentioned, the Finance Committee met about 10 days ago and reviewed the MOU and the financial implications. Adam Benson was present and gave us a more detailed version of the presentation that we've all heard tonight. I don't intend to go on for very long. I'm going to make up for some of the time that other speakers have gone over, I hope. I just thought it was worth mentioning that the Finance Committee voted 8-5 to recommend to the board that it approve and adopt the MOU. I was one of the 8 who voted in favor of that motion, and so I thought it would be worthwhile for me to explain to the board and to the public why I voted that way. 3 things, basically. This was a negotiation. We don't get to impose our vision of an ideal in the abstract. The district was represented by experienced professional negotiators. We were informed at the Finance Committee meeting that the negotiation had produced a result that neither side was happy with, which is usually the sign of a good negotiated result. So there's no reason to believe that we could have done better at the bargaining table. Second, the agreement makes important advances, small, admittedly, but important advances in several directions. Contributions towards both active and retiree health care. It's a start. We have to start somewhere, and this gets us going. On the pension front, there are employee contributions towards pension, and one thing that wasn't mentioned in this one-page sheet, but I think it's significant, is that new employees, including the newest officer whom we met tonight, will be, and I'm sorry about this, Officer Foley, will be enjoying a less rich pension benefit because the new formula is 2.7% at age 57 instead of 3% at age 50. Not going to be a big difference now, but over the years, as the force changes, that will make a significant difference in our costs. Third, as several other speakers have said, fairness really does enter into it. The police officers have served us well. They've done so without a contract. This negotiation has gone on for over 2 years, and we've had at least one false start. We've got a result that I think serves both sides well, and I hope the board will vote to approve it.
All these tall speakers. Okay, start. Mabry Benson again. My first question is that I've not heard a clarification whether there's anything in the contract that would prohibit the district from finding or arranging any other mode of providing police services. Do I get one now or later?
You do, actually. That's actually in the very first page on management.
Okay, I'm taking that off my time. Thank you.
I'll stop talking about it.
No, no.
The point is, there's a management rights provision. I'm sorry. There is a management rights provision in this agreement. It's paragraph 2A, and I'd ask you to take a look at it very carefully.
Well, I didn't fully understand if that gave us the rights that I asked for.
I think it does.
Yeah, you think it does?
Yeah,
Does our law group agree?
I'm yielding to you.
Okay. That's on the record that we're assuming that. Stop.
I think we should
Okay.
stick to comments and not have all
Okay.
these questions.
Okay, may I note note that this is only a tentative contract until the board votes on it. It must be approved, and that's a known part of the process. The board does have every right to reject the contract. Another question is about, I understand we do have an obligation to our past retirees, but does this contract commit us to any future retirees having health care coverage? That was a question.
Okay. We'll answer later. Okay. Which would you prefer?
We have to get...
Well, okay, I'm not using my time to hear the answer to the questions.
I understand you have to leave, and I respect that because I've been in that position, but what's more important, that we have the public ask questions and have answers so they can be informed? Oh, Len.
No, they could not have been
Len.
asked earlier. I couldn't ask it in my earlier thing, and it's a question I asked before, and I have not received a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, we can answer. Our interpretation of the section that Chuck pointed out is that the district does retain the right to contract out.
Oh, okay.
That was the question
previous
one.
question. I got the answer to that.
Okay, question 2 was regarding our ability to change retiree benefits in the future. And what this contract does is only provide, it recognizes the mechanism in the CalPERS regulations that require us to provide the same benefits to active employees as retirees. So if we change benefits for actives in a future contract, it would carry forward for retirees as well.
Okay, that's not my question. Okay, we're obligated to all the people who are already retired. What about new retirees? Are we obligated to cover them?
You can, there's no, the new retirees would receive the same benefit as active employees. There is nothing that would prohibit you in the future from changing that.
Well, if you can't change it now, I don't see, if you can't change it for old retirees, why should you be able to change it in the future? That's unclear, and that's been a major point. Okay, and I brought this point up before. 2 of our directors, Ms. Gillette and Mr. Toombs, have been negotiating with the Police Officers Association, received a $900 campaign contribution from the Police Officer Association. Even though it was decided that PLG was to do the negotiations for the most recent MOU, Mr. Toombs has remained part of the process. Ms. Gillette has said she would never let a campaign contribution influence her vote. But I bet that if you took a poll, that 99.99% of the voters would opine that campaign contributions are made for the purpose of influencing legislation. Surely Ms. Gillette and Mr. Toombs are savvy enough to realize that accepting such a contribution was totally inappropriate. They should both recuse themselves from voting on this MOU, and I think PLG should give us an opinion about that. Thank you.
Thank you. What? I know that. We haven't been observing that. Maybe we should start. Go ahead.
I get 20 minutes?
No.
For you?
Okay. I'll keep it to 5. Okay. So I have a question here or a statement. So help me, I'm trying to understand something. The past chief of police and the current interim chief of police have both complained when they took office that the department was a mess. They always come in, they say, we heard from Mr. Hart how the evidence room was disorganized, the computer files were not secure, records were not kept current, budgets were not completed, and the office lacked security. So, and yet all during this time, our officers were receiving top-level pay and extremely generous benefits. That's the part I don't understand. It doesn't match up. They're getting very well paid, very well benefited, but when both Harmon and Hart came in, they were perplexed at what they found. So I'm wondering, what is it we're paying for? What have we paid for, I should say? We constantly get told that we're getting the highest quality, the best. But then when the new chief comes in, it's a different story. So I don't understand that, and I'm looking for some help. How does that be? We're facing a new MOU here. We have some financial problems, so it's a struggle for me to reconcile what's going on. I don't see how you could do it, because maybe you know something I don't know. Hopefully that's true, but it hasn't been public so far. The question then comes to mind is, what are we paying for? Top-level salaries and benefits for substandard work? Is that what's happened in the past? Should we get some money back or something? I don't know. Where was the board? Who was providing oversight and making sure that the community was getting what it was paying for? Apparently that has not happened. So that's part of I'm asking, what's going on? Once again, some members of the board are in a rush to approve the current MOU. In a rush? Yeah, in a rush. They want to vote tonight. Isn't that what
Hey, come on. Come on, hey.
Now they have to vote tonight. Okay.
Don't interrupt them, please, okay?
Please. I don't mind talking, that's fine. So now, I ask, what is the rush? After all, it's our money. I keep hearing that. It's all our money, so I don't understand the rush. The terms of the new MOU differ only slightly from the previous generous contract, and yet we're told that it's probably the best deal we're going to get. Now, I don't know about that. That's what we're told. It doesn't seem like what we're hearing tonight, that's the best deal, but I don't know. Why should anyone believe that? Perhaps the board can stop pretending that working in Kensington is such hard duty and negotiate tougher instead of giving away the store yet again. Thank you.
Marilyn Stolen. The MOU as it's written is costly because we're already starting from a very highly benefited position. It does not do enough to address costs and shared benefit costs with officers. It was negotiated by a board member, Chuck Toombs, who was endorsed by the KPOA, and one wonders how this can be construed as being impartial when a board member votes on what he has negotiated. In other towns where there's a separate town manager, that individual may negotiate a contract but does not vote, and the board members, from what I've researched, do not negotiate the contracts. Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest? But this is Kensington, so we make it up as we go along. The MOU does not have specific language regarding contracting out as an option, as it's now included in Fairfax, Moraga, Atherton. Why not here? Why not spell it out as an option? I don't think Atherton is planning to give up its police department, but they have the option in their MOU. In fact, unless I'm mistaken, I thought I saw PLG had negotiated the MOU with one of these towns when I looked at the MOU. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but those finance committee members with a solid finance background, Jim, Derek, Paula, Simon, Ron, voted against approving this MOU for various budgetary reasons. I'm in agreement with them and think that this MOU needs to be tightened up to be fiscally more conservative. It's not a question of what other agencies are doing, who gets raises in other towns. You do what is fiscally responsible in your own town. That is why Fairfax has kept the line on costs to live within their means, no raises for anyone for several years, and is building up their resources. We aren't broke, but we're not in great financial place, and it will only grow exponentially as the medical and pension costs grow with more retirees and increasing costs. We cannot isolate one cost and compare, for example, the cost of an officer at step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of one town to Kensington. It is more complex, as Jim points out. The pension and other benefits impact are more complex, and I believe that the input of those finance folks who are opposed to the MOU contract need to be taken very seriously. This new contract cannot be undone so easily as we currently see because of the previous MOUs that gave away the store, and people do not give back benefits. Regarding our so-called need to attract staff and keep staff, it certainly has not panned out for our highest paid officer. It's not wages that are the sole factor for job stability. My former client worked for KPD for a short time, a retired police officer from a city, Oakland or large as that, I can't recall. He told me he was bored out of his mind, and did not like management and decided to leave. At the time, I didn't know what he meant. That was Harmon. And he didn't know I lived in Kensington, so I just listened. This MOU does not help the town fiscally in view of the recent tactics of the KPOA. It is not the type and quality of police department I want to serve and protect me. I rather feel that I need protecting from the police department.
Since I've been watching the clock go by and certain times have been noted to be important, I would just like to say that I thought the two Gales who stood up here previously said things that I almost universally agreed with. I'm not quite sure where the KPOA, Property Owners Association, ended up, but I would just like to say I agree with both women's comments, and I feel very strongly that the agreement should be supported now. I will not go into my reasons, though they were carefully plotted over the last hour, and just say that I hope you vote soon, and I hope you vote yes. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Responding to the person who said, what do we pay, Barbara Steinberg, what do we pay the police for? What do we pay the police for? We pay the police to protect, we pay the police to protect us. And I, for one, think they're doing a very, very good job of it, to protect us in every sense of the word, including community service. And I'd like to support that as much as possible, and I wish you would too.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the MOU as presented.
I second it. Lynn, will you take a roll call, please?
Are we going to do board comments now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, now we can talk? Okay. So I'm going to make my comments here first. Thanks to John and Adam for negotiating this contract. You already know how much I admire the work that you do. Congratulations to Adam for passing his CB test. So, in my opinion, there are many positives about this contract for the Kensington taxpayer. We made movement on health care and the percentage rate. I want to address a few concerns. I find that comparisons of neighboring agencies are difficult because until we turn this building into a mini mall, we don't have a sales tax base. We rely primarily on our property taxes. I have to tell you that people have come up and said the worry about living without a contract. Well, I'll tell you that I believe, the only board member here who knows what it's like to live as a family without a union contract. I'm currently living as a family without a union contract because my husband's expired April 1st. This is the third time in his 18 years of employment that we've lived for an extended period, this is actually a short one, but over a year without a union contract. I recognize that that can be difficult on a family, but it is manageable. When questions are raised about the accuracy or relevance of our mathematical projections, they're often dismissed as, don't worry, be happy. But unfortunately, I believe that we have systemic problems relating to our financial oversight. It was stated that someone hoped that we not see this contract through only the prism of financial management. Well, unfortunately, I must disagree. That is actually the primary prism on which I must view this contract. The reason being, I agree with the writer Byron Whitmore that a budget is essentially a moral document. And this contract is essentially a budget, or the largest part of our budget. I attended the Finance Committee meeting last week, as I attend most Finance Committee meetings. And I found rather more of the same, which is that when it is asked, could we have a detailed 5-year projection to support the sustainment of this contract, it is dismissed and ignored. It is immoral to me to vote or approve on a contract which I do not have adequate documentation to support that we can sustain as a community for the life of the contract. That is why tonight I will vote no. Thank you.
Can I call the question, please?
Okay, Director Cordova?
No.
Director Gillette?
Yes.
President Welsh?
Yes.
Director Toombs?
Yes.
Vice President Chair Watt?
No.
The motion passes 3-2.
I do want to thank everyone for being respectful of my time commitment. I apologize. I have to be in Chicago tomorrow, so I'm flying out on the red eye tonight to be there tomorrow for a meeting at 10:30. So many thanks for you respecting that. And thank you to the board as well.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break, folks. Item 8D up for discussion now. Vanessa, this is your item. Would you like to brief the board and the public, please?
Yes, just give me one moment here.
I just want to warn you folks, I'm not going to last much longer. Assuming we go after 10, I'm going to ask Rochelle to take over running the meeting. Go ahead, Vanessa.
This is presented for the board's consideration. It is the related to the reappointment of Mike McGill. Mike McGill is currently the one of 2 special district representatives on the LAFCO Commission, Local Area Information Commission for Contra Costa County. He currently is a board member of the Central Contra Costa County Sanitation District, was elected in 2006. He is up for reappointment unopposed, which is probably why he is not here asking for your consideration. I can state that he, in addition to his work with LAFCO and his appointment to, his election to the Sanitation Board, he serves as the Contra Costa County District Representative to CSDA, which is the California Special Districts Association. And I'm not advocating for Mr. McGill. He's allowed to do that and has chosen not to, but I offer your consideration. I'm reading from his biography because I thought we should have something, but that's all I'll say at this time.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I don't know the guy.
Is there, there was, I'm sorry, I'm not up to date on this, but if we did not vote for him, does that create a problem for LAFCO, or?
Yes, so the meeting, the vote will be on Monday, and every special district in the county and city, because LAFCO consists of 2 city representatives, 2 special district representatives, 2 Board of Supervisor representatives, and a member of the public. And they need a quorum of 23 delegates. We are currently confirmed as a delegate. So if you don't give me a vote, I will just render one for you. But I will say, for the sake of transparency, when I was running for office, I contacted Mike McGill on many occasions to find out what some of the pressing issues were. I have certainly crossed his path at LAFCO and also at the CSDA conference, which General Manager Hart actually was with me when I introduced you to Mike McGill, across from the PLG booth. You may not remember, but it was during cocktail hour and Ms. Sheriff Watt. So, you know, a well-informed gentleman, fairly nice, and running unopposed, and currently, I believe, was nominated by 17 other special districts. So
I have met Mr. McGill, as Vanessa said, and I support his reappointment to LAFCO.
I see no reason not to support it. Do we need a vote, then?
We do.
Why don't you make a motion?
I move that we reappoint Michael McGill to the Local Area Information Commission of Contra Costa County, and that we authorize the LAFCO delegate, which would be me, to tender that vote this Monday at the convening of LAFCO delegates at the, I believe it's also at the Central Contra Costa Sanitation District meeting.
You got that, Lynn? That was a lot.
I'll second that.
Any more questions, comments from anybody? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nobody's opposed. The motion passes.
One absent. You have to note the absence.
Yes, Pat is not here to vote. She left. That's right. I didn't even say that when we began again.
Looks like it's 9:45.
Yes, we have to, if we're going to go beyond 10, we have to vote now on that we're going to do so. So do I have a motion to extend the meeting beyond 10?
I'll move that we extend the meeting beyond 10 until we're done with the agenda.
I'll second it. Do we need a roll call here? I think we do. Lynn?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
So we have a tie. What does that mean?
Actually, you require 4/5, so.
That's right.
So we're going to call it quits at 10?
Well, my back thanks you. You saved me from myself. All right, maybe, let's see. We probably ought to try to adopt the consent calendar. Anybody want to discuss an item on the consent calendar?
Actually, I wanted to pull 2 items here if we have time
Okay.
for it. I don't know if we will
Well,
or
let's
not.
see what we can get through, eh?
Yeah, okay. I'd like to pull the, I'm sorry.
All right, why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? Yeah, okay,
come
so.
on up.
Come on up.
So I'll point you to the webpage for the briefing. You can all read it. Anyways, we're going to be doing a survey. We want to do an online survey of what the public feels about police services, which services are most important, which are the least important. And secondly, as part of that survey, we want to understand what experiences they've had with police services, a variety of services. So to do that, we'd like to alert the public of the survey. And as I mentioned the last time, we want to send out a postcard to all residents. We have an estimate of cost of about $1,250. It would be the same firm that did the mailing, I believe, on Measure L and probably on the waste contract as well. It's called Mailstream. So what I'd like to do is be able to work with interim GM, Chief of Police Hart, to enter into a contract with Mailstream to carry out that function. What they would do is we would give them a copy of the postcard that we want mailed. They will essentially produce it in the form we need. We'd review it, and then they would do the mailing to all the residents. So if you are willing to give me that authority, I'll work with the interim general manager on that.
I have a question. So this is going to be something that you guys are going to do on your own. You're going to have them do the mailing, but the analysis and the questions are all going to be generated by you people?
We're going to use SurveyMonkey, which is a standard survey program. Many use it. I'm sure you're all familiar with it.
Sure.
And they generally do the statistics automatically, I guess. I mean, I don't know enough about it because I haven't done the statistics, but they do it. And we use SurveyMonkey to do the statistics on the questionnaire that we used at the last forum. So, Chuck, you had a question?
Who does the questions?
We've already done the questions. We've run it past the committee. We've taken public comment for those who attended the meetings. And it has been online as well as part of our agenda packet. So, you know, if people had an opportunity to see it, they had an opportunity to comment on it. So we're ready to go with it. It was approved at the last meeting. We will send a postcard by mail with a web address that you would go to fill out the survey. If you don't have a computer, if you aren't connected to the internet, if you feel uncomfortable in trying to do that survey at home, you can go to the public library. I have spoken to the librarian. She is more than willing to assist anyone who wants to come in and use their computers, and she or her assistants will help them find the survey. They won't help them fill it out. You'll have to fill it out yourself, and they won't look over your shoulder. So with that in mind, we're trying to cover all bases, and we're trying to alert everyone to the availability of the survey because we want to get, as is requested or required within the framework, an understanding of what the public, what the residents of Kensington find most important as far as police services are concerned. Because hopefully that will inform the board as to what police services should look like going into the future, as was earlier commented upon when you were discussing the MOU going forward. Well, it'll be by U.S. mail. It'll be a postcard in the mail.
Okay, no, you mail back your response as opposed to going online.
Well, you can, if you want, I mean, we were trying to avoid that, but if you want, you could print it out. You could presumably print out the survey, fill it out by hand, and I will make arrangements with either the district office or the library to have you deliver it there. Or theoretically, if you want to mail it into the district office, I presume that would be an option as well. We could also do that theoretically, yes. Okay.
Is there going to be a control, though? It's one survey per person? My understanding is it comes as a postcard notice. You'll have a code then to access the survey. Is that right?
You will have an ID and a password. What we don't have is we haven't taken the opportunity, shall we say, to put in provisions that only allow one person, one fill out, if you will.
Oh, you haven't done that?
No, we're trusting the honesty and the integrity of the residents of Kensington.
Could you say that again?
I will.
I don't know where to go with that. I just don't.
We're not taking the bait, David.
You can go wherever you like, Chris.
I know.
Theoretically, although we have in the survey a checkbox to say if to check out if you are not a resident. I mean, obviously, people can take it as many times as they want, and if they're not residents, they could do that as well. But,
Don't you want to try to stop that?
Well, what do you need?
I'm just saying.
Just saying.
Well, that's a good, yeah. Well, unless they, yeah, change
Lynn,
their...
did you have a question or comment?
Not to be... No, no.
There was some survey done in the past, and there was some ability to control responses so that the recipient of the responses knew that there had been one response from each.
It's by IP address, I think is what you were referring. And if this is available at the library, of course, it would always have the library IP address from that terminal, so it's not that reliable as a...
Yeah, I thought the garbage survey did...
Others have had more experience than I, and I will...
Come on up.
Hi, this is Lisa. I think what happens is you go directly to the URL. You don't have to use a password to get in. This is not a scientific, statistically relevant piece. It's really a sense of where people are coming from in the community, because there's 2 adults or maybe 2 adults and 2 teenagers in a house. You know, we wanted each person to be able to get on and fill out a survey so that there may be multiple people in a home actually who are just voting once, you know, as a resident of Kensington. So we wanted there to be that capacity as well and not block other members of a household out of being able to log on and put in their opinions about that. So it is not scientific. It's really a user-friendly, it's very simple, can't take more than 5 minutes, even for people who are challenged by computers. It's very simple, straightforward, and the idea is just to get a sense of where people are, and it really is on the honor system. So I think that's where the committee was in terms of trying to figure out how best to get this information.
So when this data is presented, when this data sort of shapes your presentation, you're going to say in a public forum that it's statistically unreliable, basically. You're going to make sure that everyone understands that.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it's statistically unreliable, but you know, if you use IP address, if you have 6 people in a home and they all use the same computer, they're going to have the same IP address. So what does that tell you? That tells you either one person has been filling it out 6 times, or you've had 6 people filling it out once. I mean, Garen, I don't know as well as Garen and Lisa with this, so I'll let them speak to it.
Can you come up here?
Join me.
Well, I just want to say, as someone who lives with teenagers, it's more likely that you'll have 60 electronic devices with which you could register an IP address than it is that you'll be 6 in 1. So I just, that I don't think is going to be a problem with the...
I mean, when you think about this in the context of voter ID fraud, right, there's almost, so people spend a lot of time worrying about it, but it's less than 1/10 of 1%. So I think, when we're here in this meeting, I think we are not statistically accurate too. I think there are some people who vote early and often with their opinions. This is a way of trying to reach the broader community. A lot of people can't come out for 1 or 2 forums, and you all charged us with, trying to assess the community, what the community values. And this is another attempt at getting more voices in the tent. Is it, something that I would want to publish in the Wall Street Journal, or, no. But I think we'll get or science, et cetera. But I mean, I think these are good points, and I think we should caveat that to say that, don't take this as, to be written in the sky, but I think it will allow us to get a broader sense of the views of Kensington.
Rob, the witching hour is almost here. Can you? I'll be very. Well, as a professionally trained statistician and practicing one, first, Aside from that, I think it's a great idea to do this. Number two, it should be clearly publicly stated that this was to gather impressions, but that it is not representative. That doesn't mean it's totally invalid. It just means it is not representative, and that it can be biased, meaning off representative target, given especially emotional issues that have been surrounding the police in this community for years. It could be loaded in one direction or another, and we won't know. That's everything in politics. Well, especially these days.
This is
but
policy, not politics.
so that's all. If there's just a statement that it's not statistically representative, we don't know about that, but we are very appreciative of people's input. That's what I'd suggest.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, what we would like to have is people's input, and we hope that people will be honest. So, and that's about as far as you can take it. Well, I will talk to the Outlook editor as well and see if we can get it in. It may be too late to get it into the Outlook, but let me look at that as well.
Okay, so we have a motion. I move that we authorize the monies you requested of $1,250.
That's what I have as an estimate right now.
Hold on. You can't vote on this. It's not on the agenda.
Well, let me ask you this: since the interim chief of police GM has the authority to use funds up to a certain level, and as I understand it, this would be below those levels, then I can go make my request.
So all I need is just a kind of a head nod that that's what you want me to do, then I'm good.
Right.
But it's not a vote.
No.
Because it's not on the agenda.
Okay, so I think we're ready to adjourn.
Thank you.
I move that we adjourn the April 14th, 2016 meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We're done.